Have you ever felt completely lost, even when you were on the move? For 40 years, the road was my escape. Loneliness was my only passenger, my shield against the promises I broke and the family I left behind. But what if I told you that to find myself again, I had to disappear for 11 days? A light stopped me in the middle of nowhere and showed me that the true map doesn't point to a place, but to a purpose. This is the story of how an old trucker got lost in the desert and finally found his way back home. Let's embark on this journey together. But before I tell you what happened on that dark road, check here to see if you're already following us. Believe me, this story has many twists and turns, and you won't want to get lost along the way. My name is Jack, and for 40 years, the open road was my home. The cab of my Peterbilt was my castle, and the hum of the engine was my lullaby. I never feared the dark asphalt or the silence that descends on the long nights. In fact, I enjoyed that solitude. It was there that I found peace. But that night, something shattered that peace. I disappeared from the world, and when I returned, I was no longer the same. Those who live on the open road like me know a special kind of silence that only exists after midnight, when the horizon merges with the sky and the road seems like a river of black velvet. It was on one of those nights in the middle of nowhere that everything changed. I was on Interstate 80, crossing the Nevada desert, a route I'd traveled hundreds of times. My load was tractor parts bound for Reno. 40 years on the road, and I'd never felt anything like it. My old Peterbilt 379, which I call Old Blue, had been my faithful companion since the late 1990s. He's loud, stubborn, and drinks diesel like there's no tomorrow. But he's never let me down. We understand each other without needing many words. That night he snored normally, devouring miles as he always did. My last stop was at a gas station in Elko. I remember having a weak coffee with a colleague named Dave, who was also heading west. "Beware the desert monotony," he said. "It can play tricks on your head." I paid for the diesel, bought a bag of chips, and a bottle of water. Everything perfectly normal. It was around 3 in the morning that the road started to feel strange. At first, I thought it was fatigue. I've been working since I was a teenager, and I know the signs when the body needs rest. But it wasn't. The sky seemed too clear for that time of night, and there wasn't a single car on the road, neither coming nor going. A silence that isn't normal, even for the loneliest road in America. I turned on the radio to dispel that strange feeling. Just hiss. I changed the station, and nothing. I slapped the dashboard, thinking the radio had broken. It was at that moment that I realized my cell phone was also dead. Not a single bar. This was strange, because that stretch of highway usually has coverage. The speedometer was reading 80 miles per hour when I noticed a strange light coming from the shoulder. It wasn't a car headlight or a street light. It wasn't anything I recognized. It was a bluish-white glow, as if someone had spilled glow-in-the-dark milk on the side of the road. I slowed down. Curiosity was nagging at me, but years of experience had taught me caution. Even so, I slowed down even further, almost stopping to get a better look. It was then that the radio started working on its own, but it wasn't playing music. It was a woman's voice, soft and clear as a crystal bell, and she was saying my name. Jack, just that, my name, clear and clear as water. I slammed on the brakes, my heart pounding in my chest. No one calls me Jack like that. To everyone on the road, I'm just another face, another driver. I pulled over and turned off the radio, but the voice continued, as if it were inside my head. Jack, the time had come. I confess that at that moment, I thought it was a robbery. I looked around but only saw that strange light ahead. I decided to start the engine and leave, but the engine didn't respond. The dashboard was lit, The lights were working, but the engine was dead. That's when I opened the door and got out. The air was still. No wind, neither hot nor cold. A silence so profound I could hear my own blood pounding in my ears. The light had spread. Now it wasn't just coming from the shoulder, but from everywhere. The ground shone, and the sky seemed made of dark velvet, but without stars. It was as if the whole world had held its breath and was waiting for something. And that something was me. Perfect. I stood there on the side of the road, and the whole world seemed to be watching me. The bluish light that had begun as a puddle on the shoulder now enveloped me completely. It wasn't hot or cold. It was just present. And the voice, that soft, womanly voice, kept echoing inside my head. Jack, it was time. Time for what? I wondered. Time to die? But I felt no fear. Just an immense curiosity, as if I were standing on the edge of a cliff, about to see something no one has ever seen. Then the scenery around me began to dissolve. It wasn't like turning off a light. It was more like the ink of the world was running away. The asphalt of Interstate 80, my old Peterbilt truck, the Nevada desert, everything dissolved into a brilliant white mist. For a moment, I was floating in nothingness. And the next, my feet touched solid ground. I was in a field, but it wasn't a field of corn or soybeans. It was a field of pure, endless white that stretched as far as the eye could see. The ground felt like packed snow, but it wasn't cold. Above me, there was no sun or clouds, just a diffuse white light. And silence, a silence deeper than any desert. I couldn't even hear my own breathing. Then the voice spoke again, no longer inside my head, but around me, as if the air itself were speaking. It's not the end, Jack. It's a pause, a chance to look at the map before moving on. And then the white field transformed. Suddenly, I was seeing scenes from my own life projected into the air like a private movie theater. I saw my younger self promising my ex-wife, Susan, that I wouldn't miss another birthday of our daughter, Sarah. And then, right afterward, I saw the real scene. Me, in a roadside diner somewhere in Nebraska, celebrating her birthday with a solitary cupcake because a shipment to Chicago couldn't wait. I felt a pang of pain in my chest, so real it made me gasp. I saw Sarah's high school graduation. She was there on the stage, smiling, searching for me in the crowd. But I wasn't there. I was stuck in a Wyoming blizzard, cursing the weather and my luck. But the truth is, I could have left a day earlier. I just didn't. The images kept flashing by. Friends I could have helped. Harsh words I said and never took back. Moments of joy I traded for a few more miles on the road. Each scene was another weight on my heart. 40 years of wrong choices and unnecessary detours. Why are you showing me this? I asked, my voice breaking. The answer came softly but firmly. Every road has its potholes, Jack. Its detours. Its broken bridges. You're only seeing your own path. I felt a sadness so deep, a guilt so overwhelming, I thought my heart would stop. So many years. So many people I left behind. It's too late, I whispered to the white field. It's too late to fix any of these things. It's never too late to change direction, the voice said with a disarming gentleness. Even on the longest road, Jack, there's always a way out. An opportunity to find a new route. The white field began to tremble and dissolve again. And now where are we going? I asked, feeling a small spark of hope emerge amid my sadness. The voice answered, "Now I will show you why you are here. I will show you your next stop, your mission." The voice promised to show me my mission, and the white landscape around me changed once more. The soft light gave way to an image so clear it felt like I could reach out and touch it. I was looking at the porch of a small blue wooden house. The paint was peeling, and the front door screen had a small tear. But there were flowers in colorful pots, and a wooden swing that moved gently in a breeze I couldn't feel. Sitting in a rocking chair on that porch was an elderly woman. She must have been in her 80s. Her hair was white as cotton and tied in a simple bun. Her wrinkled, weather-marked hands held a cup of tea. Her eyes were a light blue, a little dull with age, but they held a glow of kindness and resilience that made me think of my own grandmother. She stared at the empty road ahead with an expression of infinite patience, as if she had been waiting for someone for a very long time. "Who is she?" I asked, feeling an inexplicable connection with this woman I had never seen in my life. The voice answered softly, "Her name is Maria, but everyone knows her as the Maria of Route 66, the road she watches." "I've never seen her before," I said. "I'm sure you haven't seen her with those eyes," the voice said. "But your paths have crossed many times without you knowing it. Look closer." I focused on the image, and suddenly the scene shifted to the past. I saw a young trucker who looked like me 30 years ago in trouble on the side of the same road in front of that same blue house. The radiator hose had burst. I saw the door of the house open, and the same Maria, a few years younger, came out with a pitcher of cold lemonade and a smile. She not only offered me the drink, but called her husband, a mechanic who fixed my truck, for free. And me? I simply thanked them and continued on my way without even asking their names. The image shifted. Again, I was in a diner on the same Route 66. The waitress was a young Maria saving up to care for her young son. I complained that the coffee was cold and didn't leave a tip. Each sight was like a small stab in the back. I had passed that woman at different stages of her life and mine, but I had never really seen her. I only saw what I needed at the moment: a repair, a coffee, a service. I never saw the person. "Why is she waiting?" I asked, feeling a lump form in my throat. "She's waiting for her son," the voice explained. "He was a trucker like you, Jack, but he got lost on the road, not in an accident. He lost himself in anger and drink. He blamed his mother for his own failures and left, promising never to return. And he never did. He died 2 months ago alone in a public hospital in Flagstaff, Arizona." The voice spoke with a sadness that resembled Maria's own. "She doesn't. No, she still waits for him to come home every day." My heart broke, not for myself, but for her. For that lady on the porch, waiting for a son who would never return. "Why are you showing me this?" I asked, already knowing the answer, but needing to hear it. "Because she's waiting for you now," the voice said. "She needs help. Her house is about to be foreclosed on by the bank. She's alone and hopeless. You were a stranger she helped, and now you're a stranger who can help her. You're the answer to her prayers, Jack." Confused, I looked more closely at the woman's face. There was nothing familiar about her features, but the sense of duty was overwhelming. It was as if the road that had led me away from so many people was now leading me back to one. To her, the image of the blue porch began to intensify. The light grew brighter and brighter until all I could see was a blinding white glow. And then everything went black, and that's how everything went dark. I know it sounds crazy. And for a long time I wondered, am I the only one? Has something so strange and impossible ever happened to you or someone you know? Tell me in the comments. I need to know I'm not alone on this journey. The darkness was total for a moment, but then a sharp pain shot through me. I opened my eyes, feeling every muscle in my body ache as if I'd been run over by my own truck. I was lying in the middle of a thicket, the tall, dry grass scratching my face. The sky above was a deep blue, with a few lazy clouds floating idly by. I heard the distant chirping of birds and the buzzing of insects. I was back, but back where? I tried to sit up, and my body protested with a symphony of creaks and aches. It felt like all 62 of my years had collapsed upon me at once. With tremendous effort, I managed to stand. My clothes were dirty and torn, but they were the same ones I'd been wearing when it all happened. I looked around. I was in a vacant lot near a highway, but it wasn't Interstate 80. There was no desert in sight. The landscape was green, with gentle hills in the distance. The air was humid and smelled of wet dirt. I had no idea where I was. My wallet, cell phone, and truck. Keys were gone. I started walking toward the highway, feeling a cold panic creep up my spine. A delivery truck drove by, and I waved frantically. To my relief, it stopped. The driver, a young man with a backward baseball cap, looked at me with a mixture of pity and suspicion. "Hey, buddy, are you okay? You look like you saw a ghost." "I need help," I said, my voice hoarse and weak. "Where are we?" he frowned. "We're near Joplin, Missouri." "You're a long way from home if you're not from here." "Missouri?" The last thing I remembered was the Nevada desert. How did I get here? That didn't make sense. "Can you take me to the nearest gas station?" I asked. "I need to use a phone." He hesitated for a moment, then nodded. During the drive, I remained silent, trying to process everything. Joplin, Missouri. The visions, the voice, the lady in the blue house. Had it all been a dream? A delirium caused by fatigue? When we arrived at the gas station, I thanked the young man and went in. The first person I saw was an older man behind the counter. He looked me up and down, his eyes wide. "Oh my God, it's you. Do I know you?" I asked, confused. He pointed to a crumpled newspaper on the counter. On the cover was a picture of me. A picture my daughter Sarah had taken last Christmas. The headline read, "Mystery on the Road. Arizona trucker vanishes without a trace." I picked up the newspaper with trembling hands. The date was 11 days after the night I disappeared. 11 days. I've been gone for 11 days. "Everyone thinks you're dead," said the man named Antonio. He led me to a small back office and called the police before I could say anything. We found him, the missing trucker. He's here at my station. From that moment on, everything happened so fast. The police arrived and asked questions I couldn't answer. They took me to the hospital for a checkup. Physically, I was fine, except for dehydration and exhaustion. But mentally, I was somewhere else. I called my daughter, Sarah. The mix of relief and confusion in her voice was palpable. "Dad, where have you been?" We thought the worst had happened. I didn't know what to say to her. How could I explain that I'd been in a place that didn't exist on the map, talking to a voice that had no body? I simply said I was confused and didn't remember anything. The next few days were a blur of police interviews, phone calls from family, and unwanted attention from the local media. I felt like a stranger in my own life. The noise of the city bothered me, the anxiety of the people suffocating me. I had the constant feeling that I needed to be somewhere else, and I knew exactly where that place was. I needed to find a blue house on Route 66. I needed to find Maria, because now I knew none of it had been a dream. That lady was real, and she was waiting for me. After a few days in the hospital, they discharged me and gave me a bus ticket back to Arizona. But I didn't take that bus. The police returned a temporary license and some money my daughter had sent. They were still investigating my disappearance. But the official story was amnesia, a stressed-out trucker who simply lost it. I let them believe it. It was easier than trying to explain the truth. But I knew I couldn't go home. Not yet. I had a mission to fulfill, a debt to pay. I was in Joplin, Missouri, a place that intersects with historic Route 66. The vision of the blue house and the lady named Maria was the only thing that made sense in my head. It was my compass, my true north. I needed to find her. I started asking around at gas stations and restaurants along the old road. At first, people looked at me like I was crazy. An old trucker looking for a lady who might not even exist. But I persisted. I described the blue house, the porch swing, the white-haired lady. To my surprise, after 2 days of searching, an old waiter at a restaurant in a small town called Carthage recognized my description. "Oh, you mean Maria da Estrada? Of course I know her. Everyone around here knows her. The lady who used to help the truckers on the old road." My heart raced. She really existed. It wasn't a hallucination. "Where can I find her?" I asked, my voice choked with emotion. "She lives on the outskirts of town, near the old gas station that closed years ago. A little blue house. You can't miss it." He looked at me curiously. "But why do you want to know? Are you related to her?" "An old friend," I replied. "I came to pay a debt." I followed his directions, walking for about 20 minutes until I reached the exit of town. And then there she was, exactly as in my vision. The little blue wooden house with peeling paint, the porch swing, the flowers in the pots. And sitting in the rocking chair was her, Maria, staring at the road with the same patient expression. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I walked slowly down the gravel path. The sound of my footsteps made her look at me. Her blue eyes locked with mine, and for a moment I saw a spark of recognition. Or maybe it was just surprise. "Excuse me, ma'am," I said, stopping in front of the porch. "My name is Jack." She smiled, a gentle smile that seemed to light up her tired face. "I know who you are. I was waiting for you." I was shocked. How could she know? "I was waiting for my son Carlos," she continued. "But after a while, I understood it wouldn't be him. It would be someone sent in his place. Someone God sent." I didn't have the courage to tell her the truth about her son. "Not at that moment, Ma'am Maria," I said carefully. "I heard you're having problems with the house." Her smile faded, replaced by a deep sadness. "The bank will repossess you next week. I couldn't pay back the loan I took out for my husband's treatment before he died. I tried everything, but ... double quotes, she sighed in resignation. God knows what he does." At that moment, I knew exactly why the voice had guided me there. That woman was my mission. The road didn't take me away from her, but brought me straight to her. "Door, Lady Maria," I said with a firmness that surprised even myself. "I will help you. I don't know how yet, but I promise you won't lose your home." She looked at me with her clear, tired eyes, and for the first time in a long time, I felt I was exactly where I was supposed to be. This was my new destiny, helping. That woman was my way of mending all my own broken roads. Making the promise to help Mrs. Maria was the easy part. Keeping it would be the real challenge. The debt to the bank was almost $30,000 an amount that seemed like $1 million. To me at that moment, I had a small savings account, but it wasn't even close. I called the insurance company to locate my truck. They found it abandoned on the side of the road in Nevada, exactly where I'd left it. It would take a few weeks and a lot of paperwork to get it back. So going back to work was out of the question for now. But I couldn't sit idly by. I had made a promise. While waiting for news of my truck, I began helping Mrs. Maria with small tasks around the house. I fixed the fallen fence that was threatening to collapse. I replaced the broken tiles that were letting rain into the kitchen. I painted the front porch a bright blue that seemed to breathe life back into the old house. Every nail I hammered, every board I replaced, felt like a small step in the right direction. It was as if, by fixing her house, I was fixing pieces of myself. News of the missing trucker who had reappeared and was now helping old Maria da Estrada spread quickly through the small community of truckers who still used Route 66. One day, a driver named Joe pulled up in front of the house. His truck was smoking, and he looked desperate. I'm not a mechanic, but I know a thing or two about engines. Together, we managed to identify the problem, an old hose that had ruptured. As I helped him fix it, he told me his story. His wife was sick, and he was trying to make one last delivery to pay the hospital bills. He didn't have the money for expensive repairs. After we finished, he offered me what little money he had, but I declined. Just buy me a coffee the next time we see each other on the road, I said. He shook my hand gratefully and continued on his way. That encounter gave me an idea. There were so many of us on the road. So many lonely men and women facing mechanical problems, loneliness, and financial hardship. What if we could help each other? What if we could be a safety net for each other? I started talking to the truckers who stopped to chat, drawn by the story. I created a simple group on a messaging app and called it Angels of the Road. The idea was simple. If someone was having trouble on a particular stretch of road, they could send a message to the group. Anyone nearby could offer help. Mechanical advice, a place to stay for the night, or a hot meal. At first, it was just a few of us, but the news spread like wildfire. Truckers from all over the country began joining the group. Men I had never met began sharing their stories, their struggles, and their victories. The loneliness of the road began to lessen. We were becoming a community. Many of the truckers who passed my Route 66 and heard Mrs. Maria's story insisted on leaving a small donation. $20 here, $50 there. It wasn't much, but it was starting to add up. Mrs. Maria's house became a sort of unofficial headquarters for the Angels of the Road. She always had fresh coffee and a word of comfort for weary drivers. She became the mother of our new family. On the road, I still didn't have the money to save her house. But I had something more important. I had a purpose. I had a community, and I had hope. I was building something much bigger than I imagined. A network of mutual aid that was changing people's lives 1 mile at a time. Little did I know that this same network I created to help others was about to bring me the final piece of the puzzle of my own mission. The Road Angels network grew daily. It was incredible to see how complete strangers were willing to help each other. Mrs. Maria's little blue house became a symbol of hope on Route 66. Donations continued to arrive, slowly but steadily. We renegotiated the debt with the bank, gaining a few more months of time. I finally got my truck back and started making short trips again to earn money. Every dollar I earned went straight into the pot to save the house. But the most important piece of my mission was yet to arrive, and it came in the most unexpected way possible. It arrived in a plain white envelope on a Sunday afternoon, almost 6 months after my arrival. I was on the porch with Mrs. Maria, enjoying the last of the day's warmth when the mailman appeared at the gate. The envelope was addressed to me, care of Maria from the road, house of the blue window. There was no return address, just a loss. Angeles postmark. It must be from one of the truckers in the group, I commented, turning the envelope over in my hands. Mrs. Maria smiled. You've brought so many good people to this house, Jack. I opened the letter. The handwriting was careful, almost formal, and what I read sent a shiver down my spine. The letter began, Dear Mr. Jack, my name is Carlos Eduardo. I am Mrs. Maria's grandson. I stopped reading and looked at Mrs. Maria, who was knitting peacefully. She had no idea that the name I had just read was the same as the son she had been waiting for. My heart began to beat faster. I continued reading. The letter said that Carlos Eduardo's father, also named Carlos, had died a few months earlier. He and his father had never been close. His father was a bitter man who rarely spoke of the past. The only thing Carlos Eduardo knew was that his father had broken with the family when he was young, and that his grandmother lived somewhere on Route 66. After his father's death, Carlos Eduardo found an old box with some old photos and letters. In them, he discovered the name of the town, Carthage, and the name, Maria da Estrada. He spent months gathering the courage to reach out to her and tell her about his son's death, but he feared bringing more pain to a woman who must have already suffered enough from abandonment. And then came the most surprising part. A few weeks ago, he had joined the Angels of the Road group. He too was a truck driver, following in his father's footsteps without even knowing it. It was through the group that he heard about a trucker named Jack who disappeared for 11 days and reappeared to help a woman on Route 66. He heard the description of the blue house and the woman everyone called Maria da Estrada, and he knew it was his grandmother. The letter ended with a request. He wanted to come meet her. He wanted to apologize on his father's behalf. He wanted to be the family she no longer had. I couldn't breathe. The voice, the mission. It all made sense now. I wasn't there just to save her house. I was there to bring her family back. I was there to close a cycle of pain that had lasted decades. I looked at Mrs. Maria, who was now watching me with concern. "What's wrong, Jack? You look like you've seen a ghost." I took a deep breath and, with a shaky voice, said, "Mrs. Maria, I think I have news about your family." That envelope didn't just contain a letter. It contained the answer to all her prayers and proof that my crazy journey had a greater purpose than I could have ever imagined. The news that she had a grandson was a shock to Mrs. Maria, but a good one. After the initial surprise wore off, her eyes filled with a light I hadn't seen since I arrived. It was the light of renewed hope. That same afternoon, I replied to Carlos Eduardo's letter, sending my phone number and a formal invitation for him to visit us when he could. Less than 24 hours later, I received a message. He would be coming the following weekend. The days that followed were filled with intense and joyful preparation. Mrs. Maria cleaned the house from top to bottom, as if expecting a king's visit. She decorated the guest room with special sheets that had been stored away for years. She dug out old photo albums to show her grandson the family he'd never known. "What if he doesn't like me?" she asked one night as we prepared dinner. "What if he's like his father?" I placed my hand over hers. "He's not like his father," I said confidently. "He's coming here." That says it all. Saturday arrived, sunny and clear. The house was spotless and smelled of homemade bread. Mrs. Maria changed her dress 3 times before settling on a simple blue floral dress. She was nervous, but in a good way. Around noon, we saw a simple car turn onto our street. It stopped in front of the house, and a young man got out. He was tall and thin and had the same blue eyes as his grandmother. He stood on the sidewalk for a moment, just staring at the house, as if he couldn't believe it was real. Mrs. Maria walked to the edge of the porch, her hands on her chest. "Carlos Eduardo," she whispered. "Grandma," she replied, her voice breaking. And then they met in the middle of the gravel path. An embrace that lasted decades. An embrace that healed wounds neither of them knew they had. I stood on the porch watching the scene with tears in my eyes. That was the real mission. Saving. The house was just the stage. The real work was reconnecting those 2 souls. Later, sitting on the porch drinking lemonade, Carlos Eduardo told us more about his life. He was a good, hard-working young man with a kind heart. He felt guilty about his father's distance, but he was also eager to build a new story. He looked at me. "I need to thank you, Jack. If it weren't for you and the angels of the road, I never would have found her." He said simply, "Thank you for doing what my father couldn't." At that moment, something inside me completed itself. A cycle that began with my mysterious disappearance on the road with the voice that guided me with the mission entrusted to me. Everything led to that moment. The three of us entered the house with the blue window together. The table was set for breakfast. The aroma of homemade bread filled the room. For the first time in decades, Mrs. Maria would serve a meal to someone of her own blood, to her grandson. I felt like an intruder, but they insisted I stay. "You're family now, Jack," Mrs. Maria said with a smile. "You're the angel the road sent us." I wasn't an angel. I was just an old trucker who got lost so he could find himself. But that day, in that little blue house, I felt closer to heaven than ever. The road had taken so much from me, but in the end, it gave me everything back and more. It gave me a family, seeing that family reunite before me. That was the true destination of my journey. If this part of the journey touched your heart, if you also believe in second chances like this, show it with your like. It's a simple click, but it helps this message of hope travel much further down the road. Continuing the story, Carlos Eduardo's arrival was like a summer shower after a long drought. He brought life and laughter back to the blue house. He left the next day, but not before making two important promises. The first was that he would return every month to visit his grandmother. The second was that he would help pay off the house's debt to the bank. His job as a delivery driver in Los Angeles was steady, and he made a point of contributing. "This house is my inheritance too," he said with new determination. "It's the place my father should have returned to. I will ensure it remains in our family." With Carlos Eduardo's help and the continued donations from Angels of the Road, the debt began to diminish rapidly. The threat of the bank finally disappeared. Senora Maria's house was safe. My mission was accomplished. Or so I thought. One night, as Carlos Eduardo and I sat on the porch, gazing at the stars, he turned to me with a serious expression. "Jack, I need to ask you something. How did all this happen? I want to tell you your story. The disappearance. How did you know about my grandmother?" I took a deep breath. I had never told the full story to anyone. Not to Mrs. Maria or my daughter. It felt too intimate, too sacred to put into words. But looking at that young man who was trying to understand his own past, I felt he deserved to know the truth. So I told him everything. About the light on the road in Nevada. About the voice in my head. About the visions of my past and the image of Mrs. Maria on the porch. I told him about the feeling of a mission I had been given. He listened silently, his face a mixture of skepticism and fascination. When I finished, we sat in silence for a few minutes, the only sound the crickets in the warm Missouri night. "I don't know if I believe all this," he finally said. "It sounds like a movie story." "I know," I smiled. "Sometimes I don't even believe it myself. But it happened, son, and it changed everything." "What matters?" Mrs. Maria, who had served us coffee and now joined the conversation, interjected. "It doesn't matter if it was an angel, a hallucination, or a miracle. What matters is what Jack did afterward. The lives he touched, the family he helped reunite." She was right. The explanation didn't matter as much as the action. The experience gave me a new map, a new direction. But it was up to me to drive the truck. In the weeks that followed, something else began to change. My own family began to heal. Inspired by Carlos Eduardo's story of searching for his roots, I finally summoned the courage to call my daughter Sarah and tell her not the supernatural part, but the part about my regrets. I apologized for the birthdays missed and the broken promises. It was a difficult conversation, full of tears, but it was honest. And in the end, she said, "I love you, Dad. That's all that matters." For the first time in years, I felt like the road separating me from my own family was finally beginning to shorten. The blue house was no longer just Mrs. Maria's home. It was a safe haven, a meeting place. And for me, It was proof that even the most lost trucker can find their way back home. And sometimes home isn't a place, but a purpose. My mission wasn't just to save a house or reunite a family. It was to heal myself, and in doing so, perhaps I could help others do the same. The road ahead felt different now. It was no longer a place of solitude, but a place of connection. Today, the blue house is more alive than ever. Mrs. Maria remains on her porch, but now she no longer waits alone. Carlos Eduardo visits her every month, and my daughter Sarah flew in from Arizona a few times to meet the woman who changed her. Father's life. They became unlikely friends, brought together by an old truck driver. I am simply someone who was lost and found. I have never again had contact with the voice, the presence that guided me during those 11 days. Sometimes, driving alone in the early hours of the morning, I feel something like a silent companion, a peace that comes from nowhere. But perhaps it is just the echo of that experience, the memory of an encounter that transcends explanation. The truth is, explaining no longer matters. I don't need to prove anything to anyone. I don't need them to believe my story. The proof of my journey is in the life I live today. It is in Mrs. Maria's smile, in the gratitude in Carlos Eduardo's eyes, and in my daughter's voice on the phone. The Road Angels Network now has more than 5,000 members spread across the country. 5,000 truck drivers have gone from being lonely islands to becoming a continent of solidarity. They exchange traffic information, help each other with repairs, and most importantly, offer companionship and support in a profession that can be incredibly lonely. In the cab of my old Peterbilt, I pinned a few photos. One of Mrs. Maria smiling on the porch of the blue house. One of Carlos Eduardo and his wife on their wedding day. Mrs. Maria was there, prouder than I've ever seen her. And a recent photo of my daughter Sarah taken last Christmas when she finally convinced me to spend a whole day off the road. I look at these photos and see a mosaic of interconnected lives, all connected by an inexplicable event on a lonely night in the Nevada desert. I see Mrs. Maria, who taught me about faith and resilience. I see Carlos Eduardo, who broke a cycle of pain with his courage to seek his roots. I see my daughter Sarah, who found the strength to forgive me despite all my flaws. And who knows, maybe I myself will be an angel to someone. An unlikely 60-something angel with a gray beard and calloused hands, driving an old truck through the early hours of the morning, carrying not only cargo, but also hope. Because in the end, that's what life is about, isn't it? It's not about the time you spend on the road, but the direction you choose. It's not about avoiding potholes, but about helping others get out of them. My story isn't about disappearing. It's about being found, not by others, but by myself. And the most important lesson I've learned is that sometimes you have to lose yourself completely to finally find your way home. And home can be a little blue house on Route 66, or simply a feeling of peace in the heart of an old trucker dot. Thank you for joining me on this long journey. My journey continues, and there are still many stories to tell. To make sure you don't miss our next stop, subscribe to our channel. See you on the next stretch. Drive safely.